ReZero Starting Life in Another World Volume 12, this time with Elsa and Meili on the cover. Elsa is one of my favorite villains in this series, and that's why I am so disappointed with this cover. It doesn't portray Elsa as the great villain that she is. This cover should have been amazing, and instead it's just meh. Much like Echidna's face in Volume 10's cover, she looks way too cute here for what her character is. We have seen Elsa look very scary in a bunch of artworks in previous volumes, and here, instead of the usual dark, sinister, seductive smile she usually carries, she has this weird smirk going on. It doesn't even look like her at first glance. For the cover itself, she's in this weird side pose with Meili. The bottom half of the cover is this weird limb entanglement which you can't really perceive what's going on, as there are dark colors for the characters which are contrasted on top of a dark background, and the background itself, it looks way too urban. I can't explain it. It doesn't look like Luganica or something that would belong in the world of ReZero. Right on the last page of the afterword, the author says that he likes the cover as it's very stylish and makes Elsa and Meili look like dark sisters, so I guess this is what they were going for. Me, I just don't personally like it, which is a shame because without giving any spoilers away, if I had to guess, this is most likely the first and only cover that Elsa will have on ReZero volumes, not counting possible side stories, so for this to be her only cover for a character that I like so much is a little bit of a bummer. Honestly, since I praised Volume 11's cover so much, I think that an obvious way to do Volume 12's cover would simply be to do a dark version of this one. Instead of Frederica, you could have Elsa with her dark, sinister smile that we know and love. Instead of holding a blanket, she could be holding something like a kukri knife to make the cover more sinister. Instead of Petra sleeping, we could have Meili with a smug smile, perhaps holding a little demon beast doggo. And as for the background, you could have a forest, perhaps the forest of Roswaal's domain, and if you wanted to add some extra spice to the cover, you could perhaps put the guilty Lao or the hippo demon beast looming over in the background, and it would be a very scary, spooky cover worthy of our great villains. Okay, now that I have done my mandatory passionate rant about the covers that no one cares about except me, let's get right into Volume 12. Volume 12 marks the end of the first half of Arc 4, so we still have a long way to go, but unlike Volume 11, which just left the reader more confused, Volume 12 starts offering some answers to the long list of questions that we have for Arc 4. Bit by bit, we start to understand how this is all connected and where Arc 4 is going, and one of the main mysteries of Arc 4 up until now has been Beatrice. After the shocking twist in Volume 11 where we discover that Beatrice has a gospel, we get another new shocking twist where apparently her gospel has been blank for years. I love this twist. I'm sure that the author was grinning while writing this because it's just so diabolical. First, you doubt Beatrice as just a witch cultist, an enemy, and someone that perhaps all of her good deeds could be wiped away as they were not of her own free will, and now it completely flips. Now you look at her in another light. Everything that she did was out of her own free will, even if the gospel did not demand it. Beatrice helped Subaru in the past despite her pact, not because of it, and only now do we start to understand how relevant that is. And that pact is not between Beatrice and Roswaal, as Subaru and perhaps the reader assumed, but between Beatrice and her mama, Echidna, who pretty much set up her pact as a 400-year prank. Beatrice's conversation with Subaru in this volume is perhaps the first time she has been completely honest, and it's heartbreaking. She has 400 years of waiting and pain and expectations bottled up inside of her, and both her and Subaru know that he cannot be that person for her. She wants someone devoted to her, someone to take in 400 years of emotional baggage. It has become clear to her that that person will never come, so on one hand she's bound to her duty and will do so until the end of her life. On the other hand, she is way too tired, she's completely done, it's been too much pain for too long. Each time someone's hand reached for that door, Betty's heart was betrayed. She wants to be free from her pact, but since that pact is likely to never end, in another shocking twist, she asks Subaru to end her life. She's so desperate that she sees this as the only way that she can be free and not betray her pact. This is crushing. We didn't know that Beatrice was in this much pain, and yet we can see that her character is conflicted as she helps Subaru and makes an effort to run away from Elsa. When she realizes Subaru isn't that person, she wants to end it all and just stop the pain, but yet we can see that deep inside of her there's a little bit of a hope. Maybe her connection to Subaru holds meaning even if it isn't written in the Gospel. Right at the end, when she is slain by Elsa, she still manages to put enough of an effort to teleport Subaru away to protect him, which is strange. After all, she just got what she said she wanted, she is free from her pact, so why protect Subaru until the end? It shows that there's something there. Beatrice is a fascinating character and her entire storyline has been very compelling. She starts out as this tsundere character that is either funny or mildly annoying depending on your perspective. Personally, I've always enjoyed the back and forth with Subaru, so I found her funny, but right from the beginning of Arc 2, you can see there's more than meets the eye with her. And now in Arc 4, she has culminated into one of the most interesting storylines going on in ReZero, and she's the perfect contrast to Subaru. He got in trouble in Arc 3 around the whole theme of breaking promises, and Beatrice is the exact opposite of that. She is loyal to a fault. She would rather break herself than break her pact. Beatrice is definitely one of the high points of Arc 4, and I'm looking forward to seeing more from her. Now that we've talked about Beatrice, let's talk about her mama, Echidna. Echidna reveals her true nature in Volume 12. Echidna has been very weird from the very beginning. She has been so helpful, we even had a very emotional moment with her in Volume 11, yet she always triggered my suspicious radar. There was something wrong with her. Surely she's not as virtuous as she appears to be. After all, she is a witch. Volume 11 shows Echidna in her best light. She's helpful, she's there to save him from trauma, she's the only person he can truly confide in. Volume 12 flips that on its head. It shows the dark side of Echidna, her bad side, perhaps her true side. She lies, she manipulates, and ultimately she just wants to use Subaru for her own greedy desires. One of the various twists in Volume 12, like I've already mentioned, is the true nature of Echidna and Beatrice's pact. Echidna never planned for Beatrice's happiness or even for an end goal. She just wanted to see who Beatrice would choose. It was pure vanity and curiosity. She didn't think of Beatrice at all. That was not my objective, you see. I made Beatrice promise to wait for that person because I want to know who that girl selects to be that person. This immediately puts Echidna in villain territory, or at the very least it kicks her out of the good guys table. First, we had that very emotional moment with Beatrice saying how much pain and anguish the pact had brought her for 400 years, and now Echidna just calmly admits that she was just curious to see what would happen, and she didn't care about her own daughter in the slightest. Next, we get the implied confirmation that Echidna has a way better grasp of what's going on than she lets on. Remember back in Volume 11 when she baited Subaru into speaking about Return by Death? Well, she also conveniently gave him the means to reset, even though she could not have anticipated what would happen. So there's a very high chance that not only did she knew or had a very good idea, she didn't care about Subaru's pain to reset in the slightest. She was just curious what would happen. Her lack of empathy for Subaru's pain is pretty much confirmed in this monologue where she talks way too much. The main takeaway from this giant wall of text is that Echidna wants to use Subaru's power to explore all possibilities and satisfy her curiosity. Paraphrasing here, because I have the heart of a researcher, your authority truly makes my mouth water. How could I not covet that? With it before me, how could I not test various possibilities? What this means is that she pretty much wants Subaru to reset over and over and over again, regardless of how much pain that causes him, because she just wants to test out everything. Just look at this evil smile. Still, to be a true manipulator, you have to understand other people's emotions, and this is something that Echidna cannot do, and Subaru calls her out for it. Finally, she also lied about the whole only one witch can be present at the same time in the Castle of Dreams, and I have mixed feelings about this. On one hand, it makes sense for her character to lie to Subaru in order to manipulate him better, but I don't really see the concrete advantage she gained from lying about this. On the other hand, it really seems like a lame retcon, something that the author wrote and then later decided, nah, it would be cooler this way. I don't think it's a retcon, otherwise the author could have just removed it when going from the web novel to the light novel, so this is intentional. It's just a tiny plot point that doesn't make much sense to me. Now we know that Subaru's carelessness around her probably wasn't the best idea. Still, even with the lies, the tea, and the very boring monologues, she is still a very entertaining character, evil or not. Up until this point in the story, ReZero's villains have either been insane and completely evil like Elsa and Betelgeuse, or mindless monsters like the White Whale in the Osagi, so Echidna is the perfect Machiavellian villain that's been missing in ReZero. Now, for our clownish mastermind, Roswaal. Ever since way back in Arc 2, it's been hinted that Roswaal knows something that he's not telling, and here it's confirmed that he somewhat knows about Subaru's power. I say somewhat because while he knows that Subaru can reset, he does not know the conditions for him to activate that power. Have you already made another attempt? Now that I think of it, I have no method of recognizing whether you have done it or not. Quite a miscalculation. Also, unlike Subaru, he does not keep his memories between each reset. Even if you can try again, I cannot. The me waiting for you after a redo is not the me you see here. This is my end. In a weird way, this gives Roswaal a little bit of redemption potential, even though he just blasted a fist through Roman Garfield right in front of Subaru, because in his twisted mind, none of his actions matter, as he knows that Subaru will go back in time and undo all of this. Personally, I don't think that's much of an excuse though. As we saw in this very volume, Subaru's power may not actually go back in time, but instead hop on between various parallel worlds a la Steins Gate, so there may be a world where Roswaal did commit all of these horrible deeds. So it's become clear that in the Sanctuary, Roswaal is the main instigator of all of Subaru's problems. And why? It seems that he wants Subaru to become like him, but what does that mean? Does he want Subaru to also wear clown makeup? Once again, Arc 4 lures in the reader with a cool twist and then leaves us hanging with even more questions. Even if we don't know much yet, I've really enjoyed Roswaal's character progression. He has evolved from this behind-the-scenes mastermind into this full-on evil psycho that is somehow on the hero's side. Once again, just like Echidna, Subaru is surrounded by allies that are actually villains and not exactly on his side. I love the tension of Roswaal being on the Emilia camp while at the same time trying to sabotage them. Let's hope our favorite clown keeps putting on a show. Now, this time I left the best for last, Subaru. Subaru goes on a wild journey in this volume, and the first thing I want to note is that this is the first volume where Subaru has a clear defeatist mentality. What I mean by this is that he is acting with the full purpose of gathering information, resetting and going back. Subaru purposefully resetting isn't a new thing going all the way back to Arc 2, but here his inner dialogue and his actions are much more overt. Subaru has fully embraced return by death, even if it means resetting multiple times. He even says things like this: "I have to use death more effectively." Once again, Subaru resetting isn't something new, but the way he rationalizes it and talks about it is noticeably different in this volume. This isn't something that I can quite convey through a single quote, and that perhaps even the anime doesn't really show. It's something that you truly have to read the light novel and pay attention to his monologues to truly understand. Up until now, Subaru only sacrificed himself as a last resort and for the most part tried doing his best on every reset. That's why his sacrifices for Ram were so meaningful. Also, and I know this sounds incredibly dumb, but dying hurts, dying isn't fun. Here, Subaru seems much more comfortable with the idea of resetting multiple times. Once again, it's slight, it's nuanced, but it's an interesting character shift. I believe that this character shift is largely motivated by the conversation Echidna had with him in the previous volume, where she pretty much guaranteed him that return by death has no limit. And in true ReZero fashion, once Subaru starts getting comfortable, reality smacks him in the face. The pain train never stops, it merely slows down. In the second trial, Subaru is confronted with the idea that the worlds that he leaves behind may continue on without him, and this completely changes the way Subaru and the reader look at the story up until now. Just when Subaru was getting very comfortable with the idea of resetting at will, Echidna creeps this fear in the back of his mind. This is incredibly genius, I have no other words for it, I love it. This twist adds a whole new complexity to the story and further breaks a main character that is already consumed by regrets. In a span of a few pages, we see Subaru go from motivated to having a full-on meltdown. The only solace for Subaru was that he could go back in time and save everyone, and now even that idea gets challenged. Even if this plot point is never touched again, I think it's genius. It did its job, it planted a dark seed in Subaru's mind, and honestly, I love it. It's such a dark, twisted, and sadistic twist. On a personal note, it was kind of heartbreaking for me to read The Unknowable Presents. There was something about the other characters mourning Subaru that just struck a chord with me. For someone that's already used to reading ReZero and riding on the pain train, this for some reason hit me very deep, so kudos to the author. I really enjoyed the moment where Subaru realizes that the Ram in front of him is fake because Ram would never allow him to give up. This is a very wholesome moment and shows how strong their bond is. After everything Subaru and Ram went through, even at his lowest moment, Subaru still holds up the ideal of Ram, allowing him to see through Camilla's disguise. Finally, the book ends with Subaru rejecting Echidna's offer. After the whole parallel worlds theory, I think that Echidna's completionist methods do not appeal to Subaru very much, so that's a sales pitch failure on Echidna's part. Secondly, Subaru cares for Beatrice very much, so he just cannot team up with the person that's the direct cause of Beatrice's pain, and I respect that. At various points throughout the story, Subaru has shown to be open to use underhanded tactics to make up for his own inadequacies, but here he proves that he still has his morals. Echidna would be an invaluable ally, but Subaru will not compromise on what he thinks is right. He does not want an optimal future if that means leaving a path of destruction behind him. Once again, our main character proves that he has some heroism inside him. Volume 12 has a lot to unpack, and if I talked about everything in depth, this video would be multiple hours long, so I will say the following. I will talk about Emilia in a future review, possibly volumes 13 or 14, whenever it's the most appropriate, and when I do, I will be sure to mention the Kiss of Death, which I skipped for this review. Underneath all these plot twists, Volume 12 is very gory and brutal. There's the Kiss of Death I just mentioned, which is horrific. Elsa continues being an absolute psychopath. At one point, Subaru walks around with one eye and his body half-eaten by the Osagi. And the villagers choose to set the cathedral on fire to prevent themselves from getting eaten alive by the Osagi. And honestly, that's just a barbaric, horrifying visual. It's just bad. Arc 4 is a horror show, and it manages to somehow be even more graphic than the worst loops in Arc 3, and I didn't think that was possible. I find it funny how the Osagi is the biggest menace while barely being present. Every time the Osagi is present for only a few pages at most, but boy do those pages sure leave an impact. Overall, Volume 12 continues the emotional roller coaster from Volume 11 with great twists and emotional moments, a great volume even better than Volume 11. I've highlighted all the things that I love. If I had to criticize Volume 11 in any way, my guess would be I'd probably criticize The Witch's Tea Party. There are some details I don't like. I've already mentioned the whole Echidna was lying about the one witch thing. It doesn't really make much sense to me. It feels like plot bloat, something that could be removed, much like the Frederica thing in the previous volume. At the end of the volume, it also doesn't make much logical sense for all the witches to be there. I get that Minerva wants to stop Subaru from getting swindled by Echidna, but why does Daphne or Typhon, for example, appear? They don't have any connection with this. I guess that it's the rule of cool, it's just a better visual if all the witches are present before Satella appears, so it's not something I take very seriously, it didn't detract from my enjoyment, but it's something that feels a little bit like fan service at the end of what I think is a phenomenal book. As for my MVP of Volume 12, once again it's an extremely tough decision as Subaru bounces around all over the place and interacts with multiple characters. In terms of sheer impact per page ratio, I would have to give it to the Yosagi or Satella. They sure do a lot with the pages that they're given. This time, however, I have to give a repeat award to our now two-time MVP, Echidna. She indirectly saved Subaru in the first loop, she was constantly mentioned and referenced because of Beatrice in the second loop, and she was the hostess of our tea party in the third loop. So, once again, Echidna is the MVP. I think that she should work on her sales skills as she rambles on a bit too much, but besides that she keeps being one of the focal points of Arc 4 while not even being alive. Now that is impressive. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys on my next review. Bye bye.